Beneath the fractured veil of a winter moon, where silence wove itself into the bones of the forsaken, Isolde's breath became her only rebellion. The wind howled through the jagged peaks of the Frostfang Mountains, carrying the scent of pine resin and distant blood, remnants of a hunt that had never truly ended. Snowflakes danced like indifferent spirits, settling on the coarse fur of Isolde's threadbare cloak as she knelt in the shadow of the pack's communal fire. The flames crackled with mocking vitality, casting elongated shadows that twisted across the frozen ground, illuminating the faces of those who had once called her kin. But kin they were no longer. To them, she was a ghost, a mute specter haunting the edges of their world. Isolde's hands trembled as she signed into the air, her fingers tracing the ancient gestures of plea and endurance, symbols drawn from the old lunar rites her mother had whispered before the fever claimed her. "Please, see me." But the pack turned away, their laughter a sharp blade against the chill. Alara, the beta with eyes like polished obsidian, sneered first, her voice slicing through the night. "Look at the silent whelp, begging for scraps again. What use is a voice that never sounds? The goddess must have cursed you at birth, Isolde, to spare us your whining." The others joined in, a chorus of derision that echoed off the ice-crusted boulders. Thorn, the pack's enforcer, a hulking figure with scars mapping his arms like rivers of old wars, tossed a bone half-gnawed from the evening's kill at her feet. It landed with a thud in the snow, inches from her knees. "Eat, mute. At least your mouth can still serve for that." Laughter rippled through them, warm and communal around the fire, while Isolde's world narrowed to the cold, seeping through her gloves, the metallic tang of humiliation burning her throat. She had not spoken since the ritual, that fateful night 12 winters past, when the pack's elders had invoked the Deuce's fire to bind her emerging gifts. The flames had twisted wrong, searing her voice into silence, leaving only echoes in her chest, resonances that hummed like distant thunder beneath her skin. They called it a failure, a mark of weakness. An omega born without the strength to howl, unfit for the pack's survival in these unforgiving lands. Her father, once a respected hunter, had turned his back first, his grief hardening into shame. Banished to the fringes, she scavenged what she could, roots unearthed from frozen earth, the occasional rabbit snared by patient hands. But tonight, as the moon swelled full and silver above, the humiliation deepened into something sharper, a prelude to exile's final cut. The alpha, Garrick, rose from his seat by the fire, his silhouette towering against the glow. His fur-lined mantle was edged in the deep red of cured, blood-dyed leather, a symbol of his unchallenged rule over the Silverclaw pack. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, fixed on Isolde with the dispassionate weight of judgment. "The prophecy stirs again," he rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of one who communed with the winds. Whispers from the southern borders speak of shadows encroaching, alphas from beyond the veil, kings seeking what was lost. We cannot harbor weakness now. Isolde, your silence invites the curse. You bring ill omens to our hearth. She lifted her gaze, meeting his without flinching, her breath visible in the frigid air like a silent vow. In the depths of her, the lunar fire stirred, a warmth uncoiling from her core, not the blaze of rage, but something purer, a resonance that vibrated through her veins, syncing with the moon's pale light. It had always been there, hidden, this bond, not words, but fire woven from starlight and spirit, a gift the ritual had twisted rather than destroyed. She felt it now, pulsing in time with the distant Weavos echoing from the valleys below. Warnings or calls she could not say. Her hands moved again, deliberate and fluid. "I am no curse. I am the pack's shadow, protecting what you cannot see." Garrick's lip curled. Gestures from a broken omega, save them for the winds. He nodded to Thorn, who stepped forward, gripping her arm with iron fingers. The pain was immediate, a bloom of red against her pale skin, but Isolde did not cry out, could not, even if she wished. Instead, she exhaled slowly, her breath forming a faint shimmer in the air, carrying the subtle heat of that inner fire, warming the snow at her feet into a fleeting melt. "Take her to the border ridge," Garrick commanded. "Leave her to the mercy of the wilds. The pack endures without her silence dragging us down." The group murmured approval, their faces illuminated by the fire's dance. Orange flickers on cheeks flushed from mead and camaraderie. Isolde was dragged away, her boots scraping furrows in the snow, the wind whipping her dark hair across her face like lashes. The path wound upward through skeletal pines that clawed at the sky, their branches heavy with ice. Each step pulled her farther from the fire's warmth, deeper into the mountain's maw. At the ridge's edge, Thorn shoved her forward, the world tilting as she stumbled onto a ledge overlooking an abyss of swirling mist and jagged rocks far below. "The goddess might hear you up here, mute," he spat, his breath hot against her ear. "Or perhaps the wolves will." He turned, his form vanishing into the snowfall, leaving her alone with the moon's unblinking eye. Isolde sank to her knees, the cold stone biting through her clothes. Tears froze on her lashes, but within, the resonance built, a low hum like embers stirring to life. She pressed her palms to the ground, feeling the earth's pulse, the moon's pull. In the silence, visions flickered. 6 shadows, tall and regal, their eyes alight with a recognition she had never known. Brothers? The word formed in her mind, unbidden, tied to blood older than this pack's scorn. Far below, in the shadowed valleys, the first howls rose, not of the silver claws, but something fiercer, ancient. The wind carried them upward, mingling with her breath, and for the first time in years, Isolde felt the fire within her answer, a spark defying the night. The wind clawed at Isolde's cloak like a beast denied its prey, whipping snow into a frenzy that blurred the line between sky and stone. She huddled on the ridge, the abyss yawning below her like an open grave, its mists swallowing the faint glow of distant fires. The howls from the valley grew nearer, not the ragged cries of lone wolves, but a symphony of power, deep, resonant, laced with the thunder of authority that made her inner fire flicker in response. It was as if the moon itself had lent its voice to the night, pulling at the threads of her silence, urging her to listen. She rose unsteadily, her bare hands, gloves lost in the drag to the edge, numb against the icy rock. The resonance within her swelled, a vibration that hummed through her chest, syncing with those approaching calls. Fear coiled in her gut, sharp as a thorn, but beneath it stirred something older, a curiosity that warmed her blood like hidden embers. Who were they? Not silver claws. Their howls carried the scent of foreign realms, of thrones forged in blood and frost-kissed halls far beyond these peaks. From the shadowed tree line below, figures emerged, 6 in number, cloaked in dark pelts that blended with the night, their forms cutting through the storm like blades. They moved with predatory grace, not the lumbering hunt of her former pack, but the measured stride of kings evading the gaze of lesser eyes. The lead one paused, his head tilting as if scenting the air, his silhouette broad and unyielding against the swirling white. A scar traced his jaw, silvered by moonlight, and his eyes, golden as forge fire, locked onto the ridge with unerring precision. Isolde's breath caught, a visible plume that carried her warmth into the cold. Instinct screamed at her to flee, to melt into the snow as she had so many times before, but her feet rooted to the stone. The resonance pulsed stronger now, a bridge forming in the ether between her and them, tugging at memories she couldn't voice, fragments of a cradle song, a circle of strong hands, a bond severed by ritual's cruel hand. Brothers? The vision from moments ago sharpened, their faces overlaying the shadows, fierce, familiar, lost. The leader signaled, a low rumble escaping his throat that vibrated through the ground to her bones. They ascended swiftly, boots silent on the snow, weapons glinting faintly, curved blades etched with lunar runes, hilts wrapped in leather stained deep crimson. As they crested the ridge, the wind parted like a veil, revealing them fully. Alphas, each marked by the weight of crowns unseen, their auras clashing with the night's chill like storms colliding. The second, leaner with hair like raven wings, bore a fresh wound across his shoulder, blood seeping through bandages, the metallic tang reaching her even from afar. He limped slightly, cursed by some recent fray, his breath ragged yet defiant. "Who stands against the gale?" the leader growled, his voice a velvet thunder that sent shivers racing down Isolde's spine. Up close, his presence was overwhelming, tall as the ancient pines, his cloak embroidered with threads of gold that caught the moon's gleam, evoking thrones of ice and fire. But his eyes held no malice, only a haunted depth, guilt shadowing the gold like storm clouds over flame. She stepped back, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, her hands rising in instinctive signs. "Stranger, leave me to the wild." But the gestures felt futile, exposed under their scrutiny. Fear warred with that pull, the resonance humming louder, drawing her toward them even as terror urged retreat. They were not saviors. They were predators, kings in flight from some greater shadow, their scents laced with urgency and the faint rot of betrayal. The wounded one inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring. "She carries the echo," he murmured, voice rough with pain, eyes narrowing on her. "The lunar fire, it's her. The prophecy's heart beats in this silence." The others tensed, forming a loose circle around her, their breaths sinking in the cold air. Visible puffs that mingled with hers, creating a fleeting web of warmth. The third, with eyes blue as glacial depths, reached out a hand, hesitating as if burned by proximity. "Sister." The word hung, tentative, born of blood's whisper rather than certainty. Isolde recoiled, the connection slamming into her like a physical force. It was instinctive, this recognition, a spark igniting in her core, the resonance flaring hot enough to melt the snow at her feet into steaming rivulets. But denial surged, rational and cold. They were illusions, echoes of a life stolen, or worse. Deceivers come to claim her as the curse her pack had named her. Curiosity flickered, though, in the way their gazes softened, mirroring her own hidden ache. Who were these alphas, marked by guilt's heavy yoke, fleeing through her mountains with secrets that mirrored her silence? The leader knelt slowly, his massive frame folding with unexpected gentleness, bringing his face level with hers. Up close, the scar on his jaw gleamed, a map of old wars, and his scent, pine, blood, and ancient sorrow, enveloped her. "We seek the lost flame," he said softly, his voice weaving through the wind. "The one who resonates with the Deuce's will. If you are she, we mean no harm. But the shadows hunt us all." His hand hovered near her arm, not touching, as if sensing the fragility of her world. She shook her head, breath escaping in a sharp exhale that carried the heat of her inner fire, warming his skin faintly. The resonance betrayed her, humming between them like a shared pulse, instinctive and undeniable. Yet fear held her tongue, her silence, a barrier as solid as the ridge's stone. They were her blood, perhaps, but kings brought war, not solace. As the distant howls of pursuers echoed closer, Silverclaws or worse, the night pressed in, forcing a fragile truce born of necessity. The leader rose, scanning the horizon. "The storm hides us for now. Come with us, or stay and face the dawn alone." His eyes held hers, a plea wrapped in command, guilt etching lines around them like cracks in marble. Isolde hesitated, the resonance urging yes, her fear whispering no. In that suspended breath, The moon watched, its light pooling on the snow like spilled silver, illuminating the first thread of a bond that could redeem or unravel them all. And now I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments of the night they find you. The storm's fury redoubled as Isolde's fingers tightened on the edge of her cloak, the fabric sodden and heavy, clinging like a second skin chilled to the marrow. The leader's words lingered in the air, a gauntlet thrown between survival and solitude, while the howls sharpened. Closer now, a pack's relentless chorus slicing through the gale. Not just Silverclaws, something darker threaded their cries, laced with the metallic edge of foreign blades and the rot of ambition. The brothers shifted, their bodies forming a living barrier, instincts honed by thrones and betrayals aligning them against the encroaching night. She nodded once, a sharp incline of her head, the resonance within her thrumming approval even as fear clawed her ribs. Flight was her only language now, silent and swift. The leader, Ragnar, she would learn his name later, etched in the scars of forgotten wars, extended a hand, not grasping but offering, his palm scarred and calloused, warmed by the blood of kin long mourned. Isolde placed her trembling fingers in his, the contact igniting a spark that raced up her arm, her inner fire meeting his like flint to steel. No words passed, none were needed. The bond stirred, tentative as a first breath after drowning. They descended the ridge in a shadowed phalanx, the brothers flanking her like ancient guardians carved from ice and resolve. The second, Eirik, the wounded one, brought up the rear, his limp masked by sheer will, blood staining the snow in faint crimson trails that the wind hastily buried. His breath rasped, each exhale a labored defiance, but his gaze on her back burned with a protector's fire. Guilt mirrored in the lines of his face, as if her silence accused him of years stolen by fate's cruel decree. The third, Kai, with eyes like fractured glaciers, scouted ahead, his form vanishing into the whitening veil, only to re-emerge with a nod, paths cleared of immediate peril. Deeper into the Frostfang's labyrinth they plunged, where the mountains folded upon themselves in jagged embraces, hiding crevices known only to the desperate and the divine. The wind's howl morphed into a mournful dirge, carrying scents of pine sap and the acrid bite of smoke from distant pursuits. Isolde's legs burned with the effort, her bare feet, boots lost in the exile's haste, numb against the needle-sharp snow. But Ragnar's grip steadied her, his presence a bulwark against the cold's insidious creep. Through gestures, swift signs in the old tongue, illuminated by fleeting moonlight, she conveyed the Silverclaw's habits, their border patrols, the enforcer Thorn's brutal efficiency. The brothers watched her hands with rapt attention, their faces softening from regal masks into something raw, empathetic fractures in their armored souls. A cave mouth yawned ahead, veiled by icicles like the fangs of some slumbering beast. Its interior, a sanctuary of shadowed stone and faint geothermal warmth rising from Earth's hidden veins. They slipped inside, the group compressing into the dim hollow, bodies close in the confined space. Ragnar released her hand reluctantly, his golden eyes searching hers in the gloom, guilt etching deeper as he murmured, "We failed you once, little flame, the ritual that bound your voice. It was our blood's vow, twisted by elders who feared the prophecy's reach. 6 kings, scattered by war, blind to the sister we left in the cradle of shadows." His voice cracked, a velvet thunder subdued by remorse, the weight of lost years bowing his broad shoulders. Isolde sank against the rough wall, the stone's chill seeping through her cloak, but the resonance hummed steadily now, weaving through the air like invisible threads, binding their breaths into a shared rhythm. She signed slowly, deliberately. Not lost. Hidden. The fire waited. Her exhale carried the warmth, a subtle glow that danced on the cave's damp walls, illuminating faint runes carved long ago, lunar symbols of protection, echoing her inner gift. Eric slumped nearby, peeling back his bandages to reveal a gash from an assassin's blade, the flesh ragged and inflamed. Blood welled anew, dark and viscous, but he waved off Kai's concern, his raven hair matted with sweat. "The southern rivals," he grunted, voice thick with pain. "They hunt the prophecy's source, sensing its stir. If they find you, Isolde, they'll twist your silence into chains." Empathy bloomed in her chest, unbidden and fierce, a mirror to their guilt, her own isolation finding echoes in their fractured brotherhood. She crawled to him, ignoring the scrape of stone on her knees, and pressed her palms to his wound. No words, but the resonance surged, a low vibration that pulsed from her core, drawing on the lunar fire. Heat bloomed under her touch, not scorching but soothing, knitting the edges of torn flesh with ethereal light. Irik's eyes widened, golden flecks catching the faint prismatic glow, his breath sinking with hers in a moment of profound stillness. "Sister's mercy," he whispered, awe threading his tone, the pain easing as if her silence held the Deuce's own balm. The others gathered closer, their auras, steel-gray resolve, blue-tinged sorrow, the deep crimson of unspoken oaths, mingling with hers in the cave's hush. The fourth brother, Thorn, no, not her tormentor, but Torin, broad and steadfast with a mane of tawny fur, kindled a small fire from gathered tinder, the flames leaping to life with a crackle that drowned the distant howls. Shadows played across their faces, revealing the melancholic etch of kings burdened by duty, betrayals in gilded courts, wars waged for a sister's forgotten cry. Ragnar knelt beside her, his hand brushing her shoulder lightly, the contact electric yet tender. "We fled our realms in secret, drawn by dreams of resonance, a fire that calls blood to blood. You are no curse, Isolde. You are our redemption's key." Outside, the storm raged, but within, the enemy closed in. The rival Alpha's scouts, their howls now a cacophony of greed and dominance, clashing with the Silver Claw's territorial snarls. A skirmish erupted in the valley below, steel ringing on steel, the scent of fresh blood wafting on the wind like an iron promise. The brothers rose as one, blades drawn, their forms silhouetted against the fire's glow, protectors forged in the crucible of loss. Isolde stood with them, her resonance flaring brighter, a silent beacon that amplified their resolve, turning fear into fortified bond. Torin barred the cave's mouth with a fallen boulder, his muscles straining under the effort, while Kai and the fifth Lear, with eyes like ancient gold coins, listened to the fray's ebb and flow. "They'll clash and weaken each other," Lear said softly, his voice a philosophical murmur laced with sorrow. "But dawn brings no mercy. What is strength, if not the choice to shield the silent?" His gaze met Isolde's, a shared understanding passing, empathy forging the first true link, her gestures met with nods of profound respect. As the night deepened, the fire's warmth seeped into their bones, the resonance weaving a fragile web of trust. Isolde felt it then, the shift, not just survival's pact, but a bond born of mutual wounds, her silence no longer isolation, but a profound communion. The howls faded to echoes, the enemies diverted by their own savagery, granting the cave a temporary reprieve. Yet in the quiet, Ragnar's hand found hers again, guilt yielding to quiet vow. "We protect you now, as blood demands, and in time, your fire will guide us home." The moon's light filtered through cracks in the stone, silvering their faces, a testament to destinies entwined in frost and flame. The cave's shadows clung like reluctant lovers, the fire's embers pulsing in rhythm with Isolde's quickened breath, casting prismatic flickers across the rune-etched walls. The night outside had settled into a deceptive hush, the howls of clashing foes reduced to faint echoes swallowed by the storm's aftermath. Snow drifted lazily through the cracks, settling on the brothers' cloaks like ash from a dying world, while the geothermal warmth from the earth's depths wove a fragile cocoon around them. Isolde sat cross-legged on the stone floor, her palms still tingling from the healing touch on Eric's wound, the resonance within her, a living current now, humming just beneath her skin like the moon's unspoken song. Ragnar watched her across the flames, his golden eyes reflecting the glow, etched with a melancholy that spoke of thrones abandoned and oaths fractured. The guilt that shadowed him deepened in the quiet, his broad frame leaning forward as if drawn by an invisible tether. "Your fire," he murmured, voice low and resonant, carrying the weight of confessions long buried. "It mends what blades cannot, but the prophecy, it demands more than survival." He glanced at his brothers, Eric, now resting with color returning to his cheeks, Kai, sharpening his blade with methodical strokes, Torin, feeding the fire with sparse twigs, Lear, tracing the ancient runes with a finger, his golden gaze distant. The sixth, unseen until now, stirred from the deeper shadows. Finn, the youngest, with hair like spun moonlight and eyes shadowed by visions that had driven him to solitude in distant realms. He had been the scout, slipping through the storm to confirm the enemy's retreat, his lithe form marked by the subtle scars of prophetic dreams, faint silver lines across his temples, glowing faintly under the moon's indirect light. Finn emerged fully, kneeling beside Isolde with a gentleness that belied his alpha blood, his breath syncing with hers in an instinctive harmony. "The dreams led us here," he said softly, his voice a philosophical whisper laced with sorrow. "A silent flame, binding the 6 realms against the encroaching void. We thought it a myth, a riddle to justify our flight from betrayals in our courts. But you—" His hand hovered near her shoulder, not touching, as if afraid the resonance might shatter the fragile peace. Isolde felt it building then, unbidden and inexorable, a swell in her core, the lunar fire uncoiling like a serpent roused from slumber. The cave seemed to narrow, the air thickening with the scent of ozone and ancient pine, her silence no longer a void, but a vessel brimming with potential. She had always sensed it. The ritual's twist had not stolen her voice, but reshaped it, forging words into something deeper, a spiritual bridge woven from starlight and spirit. Fear gripped her, cold as the snow seeping through the entrance, rationalizing it away as mere warmth, a survival's trick. But the brothers' presences amplified it, their blood calling to hers, stirring the gift into manifestation. Her hands rose instinctively, signing into the flickering light. "It burns. Too much." But the gestures faltered, dissolving into tremors as the resonance erupted, a low vibration that emanated from her chest, rippling outward like waves on a frozen lake. The fire leaped higher, flames twisting into ethereal shapes, lunar wolves circling a central blaze, their forms projected onto the walls in shimmering silver and crimson. The brothers froze, their breaths catching in unison, eyes widening as the cave filled with a symphony of soundless echoes. Weavos internalized, the moon's howl given form through her silence. Eric sat up sharply, the healed wound forgotten, his raven hair falling across a face alight with awe. "The Pathfinder's gift," he breathed, voice rough with revelation. "She resonates the Deuce's will, guiding fates unseen." The vibration pulsed through them, syncing their heartbeats into a unified rhythm, visions flooding their minds, fragments of a shared past. The cradle ritual where elders, fearing the prophecy's power, had bound her voice to protect the realms, scattering the brothers to rule in isolation. But the binding had cracked under the moon's pull, her silence becoming the key to reunion, a fire that could illuminate paths through war's encroaching darkness. Ragnar reached for her then, his scarred hand enveloping hers, the contact igniting a cascade of warmth that chased the chill from her bones. Guilt fractured in his eyes, melting into profound recognition. You are the source, Isolde, the prophecy's heart, the mute Omega who speaks to destinies. Our realms teeter on betrayal's edge. Southern kings covet the northern thrones, weaving alliances with shadow beasts that devour the light. Your resonance. It reveals the traitors among us, the paths to redemption or ruin. His voice trembled, the ethical weight of it bowing him. Kings who had ruled with iron duty, now confronted by a sister's mercy as the true crown. The manifestation intensified, the ethereal wolves on the walls snarling silently toward the cave's mouth, where fresh scents wafted on the wind, blood and steel, the rivals regrouping, their howls laced with cunning ambition. Isolde's body arched, the fire surging through her veins like liquid moonlight, her breath forming visible spirals of heat that danced in the air, illuminating hidden crevices in the stone. Passages etched by ancient pathfinders, glowing with directional runes that pointed southward toward the heart of the threat. Finn's eyes gleamed with the fervor of one who had chased visions across frozen wastes. She shows us the way, he said, philosophical undertone deepening into urgency. Not through conquest, but choice, mercy over dominance, unity over scattered crowns. But to wield it fully, she must embrace the voice within, or the shadows will claim it. Lear nodded, his gold-flecked gaze meeting hers, sorrow mingling with hope. What is power, if not the silence that commands the storm? Torin doused the physical fire with snow, plunging them into the glow of her resonance alone. The cave a temple of silver light and crimson shadows. Kai sheathed his blade, his glacial eyes softening. The enemies close. Dawn reveals no quarter. Your gift binds us, sister, but it demands a price, your hidden pain laid bare. Isolde collapsed forward, the manifestation ebbing like a tide, leaving her trembling, the resonance a steady hum now, internalized once more. Exhaustion clawed at her, but clarity burned brighter. She was no longer the pack's curse, but the brothers' destiny, her silence the forge of their redemption. Yet doubt lingered, a moral precipice. Unleash the fire through violence, howling back at the world that silenced her, or reveal it through compassion, guiding without breaking. The moon's light pierced the cracks, bathing her in silver, as the distant clash of steel resumed, drawing nearer, forcing the revelation into action. In that suspended breath, the brothers encircled her, their presences a bulwark of blood and remorse, the lunar fire flickering in their eyes like stars reborn from ash. The night whispered of trials to come, her gift the flame that could light the path to rebirth, or consume them all in its unforgiving glow. The cave's silver glow faded like a sigh, leaving Isolde adrift in the dim hush, her body a vessel hollowed by the revelation's tide. The resonance lingered in her veins, a faint echo syncing with the brothers' breaths, but exhaustion wrapped her in its iron embrace, pulling her toward the stone floor. Ragnar's hand steadied her, his touch an anchor of warmth amid the encroaching chill. Yet his golden eyes darkened with the storm of what came next, judgment's inexorable march. Outside, the night's fragile peace shattered. Steel clashed in rhythmic fury, the rivals' howls intertwining with the Silverclaw's snarls, a cacophony rising like blood from fresh wounds. The enemies converged, drawn by the prophecy's flare, their sense, ambition's rot and territorial fury, seeping through the cracks like poison mist. She rose on trembling legs, the lunar fire stirring anew, not as balm, but as warning, illuminating the hidden passages her gift had revealed. The brothers moved as one, their forms coalescing into a phalanx of shadowed resolve. Eirik, wound, sealed, but spirit-scarred, gripping his blade with renewed ferocity. Kai's glacial stare fixed on the entrance, calculating paths through the fray. Torin's broad frame barring the way, muscles taut like drawn bowstrings. Finn, the visionary, traced her arm lightly, his moonlight hair catching the residual glow, whispering, "The shadows demand confrontation now. Your fire lights the traitors' faces." Lear nodded, his gold-flecked eyes heavy with philosophy's burden. "The past howls back, sister. Will you meet it with flame or forgiveness?" Isolde's heart pounded, a visceral drum against her ribs, the resonance amplifying the chaos beyond. Garrick's voice booming through the wind, commanding Thorn's brutes in a bid to claim the prophecy's source before the Southern kings could. Betrayal's thread unraveled in her mind. The Silverclaws, her former kin, had always known of the ritual's deeper cost, elders whispering of a lost royal line to preserve their fragile power. Garrick, the alpha who had exiled her, was no mere tyrant. He was the traitor, allying with the rivals in secret pacts forged in mead-soaked halls, trading her silence for scraps of southern gold. The vision burned clear now, her gift unveiling it. His gray eyes meeting shadowed envoys under the moon, oaths sworn to bind the 6 realms under one corrupt crown. Fear coiled tight in her gut, cold as the snow drifting inward, but beneath it surged a moral tempest. Violence to reclaim her voice, howling through bloodied resonance to shatter the chains, or mercy, revealing the truth to unmake the alliances without a single drop spilled. The brothers sensed her turmoil, Ragnar's grip tightening, guilt etching his features like fresh scars. "We face them together," he rumbled, voice a velvet command laced with remorse. "But the choice is yours, little flame. Our crowns mean nothing without your will." They spilled from the cave into the storm's dying breath, the world a whirlwind of white and crimson, snow churned to slush by trampling boots, the air thick with the tang of sweat and iron. The ridge became a battlefield, torchlight flickering like erratic stars, illuminating the clash. Silverclaws in ragged formation, their fur cloaks matted with frost, clashing against the southern alphas, sleek invaders in armored pelts, their blades rune-etched with void symbols that drank the moonlight. Garrick towered at the fore, his red-dyed mantle torn, eyes wild with greed as he bellowed, "The mute whelp hides the power. Seize her, and the realms kneel." Thorn lunged first, his hulking form barreling through the melee, scarred arms swinging a massive axe toward Isolde. She dodged, the wind whipping her hair like vengeful spirits, her bare feet slipping on blood-slick ice. The resonance flared instinctively, a vibration rippling from her core, syncing with the brothers' roars as they engaged. Eric parrying a rival's strike with savage grace, his healed shoulder flexing without pain. Kai weaving through foes like a glacier's shadow, his blade drawing precise arcs of red. Torin met Thorn head-on, their collision a thunderclap that shook the snow from nearby pines, grunts echoing as muscle met muscle in brutal symphony. Isolde backed toward the ledge, heart a frantic flutter, the abyss below whispering of easier ends. Garrick broke through, his gray eyes locking on hers with the dispassionate hunger of judgment long delivered. "You were always the weakness," he snarled, circling her with predatory slowness, his breath visible plumes reeking of mead and deceit. "The ritual silenced you to hide the royal blood, but now it dooms us all. Join the Southern Pact, or die as the curse you are." His words sliced deeper than any blade, dredging the humiliation's old wounds, the laughter by the fire, the bone tossed like offal, her gestures dismissed as madness. The lunar fire surged, hot and unyielding, begging release through violence. A resonant howl that could shatter his mind, blood spilling to echo her silenced pain. Her hands clenched, nails biting palms, drawing crimson beads that steamed in the cold, blood as symbol, fate's ink. But the brothers' presences pulled at her, their ethical cores, melancholic kings who had ruled with duty's yoke, now fighting not for thrones but redemption, mirroring her dilemma. Ragnar fought nearby, fending off 2 rivals, his golden eyes flashing to her amid the chaos, a silent plea. "Choose mercy as we choose you." In that visceral heartbeat, as Thorn's axe swung wide and Garrick lunged, Isolde exhaled, a deliberate breath carrying the resonance's full weight. Not a scream, but a wave of inner fire, invisible yet tangible, rippling outward to envelop the Alpha. Visions assaulted him, the ritual's truth unveiled, his secret oaths laid bare in lunar clarity, the envoys' faces, the gold exchanged, the pack's impending fall under foreign rule. Garrick staggered, clutching his head, the gray in his eyes fracturing with horror. No, the blood binds. He gasped, dropping to his knees in the snow, the fight draining from him like color from frost-bitten flesh. The resonance spread, a merciful revelation halting the fray, Silverclaws faltering as whispers of betrayal rippled through their ranks, rivals hesitating as the prophecy's light exposed their void-marked blades as illusions of power. Thorn lowered his axe, confusion etching his scarred face, while the southern kings retreated into the mist, their howls turning to wary snarls. Isolde stood amid the settling snow, breath ragged, the fire ebbing to a warm hum. She had chosen not war's howl, but compassion's echo, forgiveness as weapon, unmaking dominance through truth's quiet force. Yet the victory tasted of ash. Garrick's gaze lifted to hers, broken and pleading, the pack's eyes turning not with awe, but dawning shame. Freedom beckoned, the brothers closing ranks around her, but the moral weight pressed. Had mercy crowned her, or merely delayed the blood debt? Ragnar's hand found her shoulder, his touch tender amid the carnage, guilt yielding to profound pride. "You redefine us all," he murmured, as the moon crested higher, silvering the bloodied snow like a shroud over old sins. In the silence that followed, Isolde felt the resonance settle, a bridge to rebirth. But the night's ethical shadow lingered. What price for a voice forged in restraint when the world demanded dominance? The wind carried away the last echoes of battle, leaving only the pulse of blood-bound fates, unresolved and aching. The snow lay like a shroud over the ridge, crimson-flecked where mercy had staunched the flow of old wounds. The air heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the fading ozone of Isolde's resonant wave. Dawn crept in reluctant fingers of pale gold, piercing the mist that clung to the mountains like the breath of the dying. Isolde stood at the epicenter of the stillness, her bare feet rooted in the slush, the lunar fire within her a steady ember now, no longer the wild surge that had unraveled Garrick's deceit. The Alpha knelt before her, his gray eyes hollowed by the vision she had forced upon him, truths etched in silver light, exposing the pacts that would have chained the realms to southern shadows. His pack encircled them, faces etched with shame's raw geometry, Thorn's scarred arms limp at his sides, the axe forgotten in the snow. Alara's obsidian gaze averted, the laughter of fireside nights curdled into regret. The brothers formed a silent vanguard behind her, their presences a tapestry of quiet strength. Ragnar's golden eyes watchful, laced with the melancholy of kings who had glimpsed redemption's fragile edge. Eric's raven hair matted with sweat and frost, his healed form a testament to her gift's quiet power. Kai's glacial stare scanning the horizon for lingering threats, while Torin, Lear, and Finn stood as pillars, their auras mingling with hers in a blood-deep harmony. The resonance hummed low in her chest, sinking their pulses into a unified rhythm, the moon's pull ebbing as the sun rose, yet leaving its spiritual imprint. A bond forged not in dominance, but in the choice to heal rather than howl. Garrick lifted his head slowly, the weight of his crown, self-imposed and rotten, crushing him further into the snow. The ritual. It was to bury the royal line, to keep the Silverclaws strong in isolation, he rasped, voice cracking like ice underfoot. But you, Isolde, the fire we silenced, it burns brighter than any throne. Forgive. Or end it. His words hung. A moral precipice mirrored in the abyss below the ridge, where mists swirled like unresolved fates. The pack shifted uneasily, their breaths visible in the chill dawn, scents of pine and fear weaving through the air. Humiliation's old lash stung her anew, the bone tossed at her feet, the gestures dismissed as weakness. But now, in the resonance's afterglow, it transformed, alchemizing pain into the forge of rebirth. Isolde's hands trembled as she extended them, not in violence's sign, but in the ancient lunar gesture of binding. Palms upturned, fingers splayed like rays of a hidden sun. The fire stirred, uncoiling from her core with a warmth that chased the cold from her bones, spreading outward in invisible tendrils. It enveloped Garrick first, a soothing vibration that eased the tension from his frame, visions shifting from accusation to revelation, paths untaken, alliances unmade, the Deuce's mercy as a crown for the fallen. He gasped, tears freezing on his lashes, the gray in his eyes softening to storm-washed silver. Mercy. For one who silenced the flame, he whispered, rising unsteadily, his red-dyed mantle trailing in the snow like shed sin. The resonance expanded, a spiritual tide washing over the pack, their bodies stilling as inner echoes surfaced. Regrets of scorn, the fire's communal warmth denied to one who had always been its guardian. Ilara stepped forward, her obsidian eyes meeting Isolde's without flinching, a tentative hand offered. "We saw curse where destiny breathed," she murmured, voice thick with the raw edge of atonement. Thorn nodded, his hulking form bowed, the enforcer's scars seeming less like trophies and more like maps of shared suffering. The pack knelt as one, not in submission, but in union, the wind carrying their collective exhale, a silent howl of renewal, syncing with Isolde's breath. Behind her, Ragnar's hand brushed her shoulder, the contact electric yet tender, his guilt yielding to a profound union that transcended blood. "You choose healing over the blade's kiss," he said softly, his voice a velvet rumble laced with ethical awe. "Our realms fractured by betrayal, scattered by fear of your light, now mended by the silence that speaks truest." The brothers closed in, their forms encircling her and the pack, auras blending in a symphony of crimson resolve and silver sorrow. Eric's golden-flecked gaze held hers, the wound's memory a bridge to empathy. Kai's glacial reserve thawed into quiet pride, Torin's steadfast bulk a bulwark of acceptance, Lear's philosophical depth murmuring, "What is rebirth, if not mercy's quiet roar?" Finn, the visionary, traced a rune in the air, his moonlight hair glowing faintly, sealing the moment with prophetic grace. The lunar fire peaked then, not in destruction but sacrifice. Isolde felt it draw from her essence, a willing offering that knit the fractures. Silver claws rising as allies, their territorial snarls turning to vows of protection against the southern void. Garrick clasped her forearm, the grip firm yet reverent, blood from a shallow cut on his palm mingling with hers in a ritual born of the moment, crimson sealing the bond, steaming faintly in the dawn's chill. Pain lanced through her, sharp as the ritual's old sear, but it transmuted into release, her resonance channeling the Deuce's will into a shared vision. 6 realms united under a silent pathfinder, thrones balanced by compassion's scale, the encroaching shadows repelled not by war's fire, but by light's unyielding resonance. As the sun crested fully, gilding the snow in ancient gold, Isolde exhaled, the fire settling into a perpetual hum, her silence no longer isolation, but the realm's guiding breath. The pack dispersed to fortify the borders, their steps purposeful in the crunching slush, while the brothers remained, their melancholic cores alight with redemption's proof. Ragnar pulled her close, not as king but kin, his forehead resting against hers, breaths mingling in the crisp air. "You are our union, little flame, voice of the moon, redeemer of the broken." The wind softened to a whisper, carrying uivos of distant affirmation, the mountains standing sentinel over fates reborn. Yet in the heart of that healing, a subtle ache lingered, the sacrifice of her inner reserves leaving her lighter, ethereal, as if the fire had claimed a piece of her mortality. Freedom tasted of frost-kissed renewal, but the ethical shadow whispered of costs yet to unfold. Could mercy endure the void's return, or would it demand a final howl? The dawn's light pooled around them, silver and gold entwining like blood and fate, illuminating the path to ultimate rebirth, or the precipice beyond. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive. The sun's ascent painted the frost-fang peaks in strokes of molten gold, thawing the night's crimson scars into rivulets that traced the stone like veins of forgiveness. Isolde stood amidst the brothers and the reformed Silverclaws, the resonance within her, a gentle tide now, ebbing and flowing with the rhythm of renewed breaths. The air hummed with the scent of wet earth and pine. The wind's earlier fury softened to a caress that lifted strands of her dark hair, carrying away the last whispers of betrayal. Garrick lingered at the periphery, his once imposing frame diminished, eyes silvered by the mercy she had extended, a choice that had unraveled his throne but mended the fractures in the pack's soul. No blood had been spilled in vengeance. Instead, her silence had spoken, revealing paths of light where shadows once dominated. Yet as the dawn warmed her chilled skin, a deeper pull stirred in Isolde's core, the lunar fire demanding its final toll. It had always been more than resonance, this gift twisted by the ritual, a spiritual forge, binding blood to destiny, but exacting sacrifice in exchange for union. She felt it now, coiling tighter, drawing from the essence that had sustained her through years of scorn, the quiet endurance that had kept her alive on the fringes, scavenging roots and shadows. Exhaustion seeped into her limbs, heavier than the snow's weight, her vision blurring at the edges with silver flecks, as if the moon's light lingered in her veins, reluctant to release its hold. Ragnar sensed it first, his golden eyes narrowing as he stepped closer, the melancholic lines of his face deepening with unspoken dread. His hand, scarred and steady, cupped her elbow, the contact sending a spark through her that chased the encroaching void. "Little flame," he murmured, voice a low rumble laced with the guilt of kings who had reclaimed a sister only to face her fading. The fire gives, but it claims. Your choice, our redemption, cannot end in ash. The brothers drew nearer, their presences a circle of crimson auras and steel resolve. Eric's raven gaze fierce with protector's fire, Kai's glacial calm fracturing into urgency, Torin's broad form a silent vow, Lear's philosophical depth murmuring ancient rites under his breath, Finn's visionary eyes alight with the moon's fading glow, tracing runes in the air to anchor her. Isolde met Ragnar's stare, her breath visible in the crisp air, carrying the subtle heat of her inner blaze. The pack watched from afar, their forms silhouetted against the rising light. Alara's obsidian eyes softened, thorn scars a testament to battles turned inward. The resonance pulsed, syncing with the distant uivos of awakened wolves, the mountains themselves seeming to lean in, expectant. Freedom had come, not as a howl of triumph, but as this quiet union, the Silverclaws pledging fealty to the royal line they had once buried. Garrick approached then, his steps measured, offering a carved amulet from his mantle, lunar stone veined with crimson quartz, a symbol of the elder's old binding, now repurposed as key to her voice's release. "Take it," he said, voice rough with atonement. "The ritual's echo lingers. Your mercy spares us. Let it spare you." Her fingers closed around the amulet, the stone cool against her palm, awakening memories, the cradle's warmth, 6 infant howls mingling with her silent cry, the elder's chants twisting fate to scatter the bloodline. The fire surged in response, a visceral heat blooming in her chest, demanding the ultimate choice, sacrifice the resonance to cure her silence, unleashing a voice that could command realms but sever the spiritual bond, or embrace union, letting the fire consume its excess, healing the brother's guilt through shared rebirth, her muteness evolving into eternal guidance. Pain lanced through her, sharp as thorns under skin, the wind whipping colder, snowflakes melting on her lashes like unshed tears. What was strength, if not yielding the self for the whole? The ethical shadow of the night pressed, dominance through words or compassion's enduring whisper. She pressed the amulet to her heart, the resonance flaring outward in a cascade of silver light, enveloping the circle. Visions flooded them all, shared and intimate, the 6 realms rising united, thrones of ice and fire balanced by her light, southern voids repelled by packs bound in mercy's chain. But the fire pulled deeper, siphoning her vitality, her knees buckling as ethereal flames licked at her form, not scorching but purifying, crimson threads weaving through the silver to symbolize blood's redemption. Ragnar caught her, his arms a fortress of warmth, guilt shattering in his eyes as he whispered, "No, sister, hold." The brothers joined, hands linking in a chain, their breaths merging with hers, amplifying the rite. Eric's healed wound reopened faintly, a willing echo of sacrifice. Kai's reserve melted into raw plea. Torin's steadfastness anchored the flow. Lear intoned, "In silence, we find the Deuce's roar, cure through union, not loss." The lunar fire crested, a spiritual blaze that arched across the dawn sky like a bridge of starlight and blood, the mountains echoing with internalized weavos, resonances from every wolf in the realms, drawn by her pull. Isolde arched in Ragnar's hold, the amulet glowing hot, its stone cracking as the ritual's bind fractured. No words escaped her lips. Instead, the fire transmuted, curing not her voice, but the deeper wounds, the isolation of her exile, the brothers' scattered guilt, the pack's shame. It flowed into them, a healing union that knit souls, Ragnar's melancholy lifting like mist under sun, Eirik's pain alchemized to purpose, the others reborn in ethical clarity, their crowns no longer yokes, but beacons. As the light faded, Isolde slumped against Ragnar, the resonance settling into a profound harmony, her silence enriched, gestures now laced with visible warmth, breaths that conveyed destinies without sound. The amulet crumbled to dust in her palm, carried away by the wind, a symbol released. The pack howled then, a chorus of rebirth, silver and crimson banners unfurling in the valleys below as messengers spread the union. Garrick knelt once more, not in defeat, but alliance, his gray eyes clear. You redefine rule, Pathfinder. Mercy crowns the mute. The sun fully crested, gilding their forms in ancient gold, the cold yielding to spring's faint promise beneath the snow. Isolde rose, supported by her brothers, the lunar fire a perpetual ember within, guiding without consuming. Rebirth bloomed, not in triumphant roars, but in the quiet pulse of blood-bound fates, where love proved redemption's forge, transcending hierarchies in compassionate flame. The mountains stood eternal witness, their peaks etched with the story of a silenced Omega who spoke worlds into healing, her choice the light that banished shadows forever. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.